And welcome to episode 17. Favorite number of my best friend Matthew Capina. Happy birthday, Capina. This, of course, is
Mo Money,
the investing show for millennials by a millennial, where our goal is to educate, entertain, and empower a new generation of investors. I am, of course, the host, the bold genius, the Kanye West of financial shows, MC Mo. Let's get started with a
Mo Money Market Update.
Market has been continuing a seesaw pattern. Days of big ups and big downs. It's hard to predict which way the market is going to move in these volatile times. A lot of people are sitting in cash waiting for a crash or the skies to clear. Oil is up, almost touching $49 a barrel, but that market is just as unknown and volatile as the equity markets. But the big news this week is the Federal Reserve, who has been relatively quiet over the past few weeks, has started making waves when they said that a June rate hike is definitely on the table. The fear has sent the market crashing down on Wednesday and bank stocks soaring higher, including JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Goldman Sachs, all companies that would greatly benefit from the rate hike. Federal Reserve proceeds with the rate hike in June. The big banks are poised to have a great upcoming quarter. Now, after last week's episode, the Big Bank Theory, we are all familiar with them and how through legislation they were able to grow into these too big to fail banks. But an often forgot or laughed at portion of the saga of big banks is the backlash received during the financial crisis. The movement known as Occupy Wall Street. It started with an occupation of Zuccotti Park on September 17, 2011, a park 2 blocks away from Wall Street and near HSBC, RBC, Wells Fargo, Bank of Japan, and Bank of America. The banks felt the movement. They feared the movement. The people had brought their grievances straight to their front door. The movement grew to hundreds of cities across the world, but the occupation came to an end in November 15, 2011, when they were evicted from the park. Cops showed up, agitated the protesters because that's what cops are paid to do, and the show was shut down. A lot of people say that the movement was a failure. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. But I beg to disagree. Which brings us to the topic of this week's episode, how Occupy Wall Street succeeded
slowly.
Now, I was excited to write this week's episode because I was ready to dismiss the Occupy Wall Street for being a bunch of fucking stupid hippies. I mean, I really hate hippies. They're the biggest detriment to society. They just want to sit around, smoke weed, and play guitar. I mean, I enjoy the occasional meal of devil lettuce and I love playing guitar, but the lack of motivation and production makes them an absolute waste. Being a hippie used to mean you were hip to what was going on in the world and you fought for change. Now, it's just degenerated into these, degenerates who just talk about world peace and do nothing. But I digress. But it feels good to get that hatred of hippies off my chest. Anyways, I was ready to talk about how Occupy Wall Street failed. But it didn't fail. Like all revolutions, it succeeded very slowly. Now, there was a lot of crap at Occupy Wall Street. There was extremists, anarchists, people who didn't know anything about what they were talking about, and people who were just flat out angry. Okay, but at the core of the movement were people who had a real message, a real angst, a real grievance, and a real set of goals. Here are some of the goals that were at the real heart of the movement. First, free and fair elections and no financial gifting. Second, ending corporate greed, the 99% versus the 1%. Third, ending the Federal Reserve. 4, transparency of the meltdown and the bailout. 5, foreign relations and trade agreements of the United States. Now, does that entire platform sound like one of a certain presidential candidate? It does almost 100% sound like Bernie Sanders' platform. Bernie Sanders is on the record supporting the Occupy Wall Street movement, as well as Elizabeth Warren, Obama, and a lot of communist people, but that's neither here nor there. I watched hours and hours of Occupy Wall Street documentaries while researching for this episode. Now, no matter what the media, Fox News, Republicans, all of them would have you believe, the movement was not anti-capitalism. Most of it was pro-capitalism. It was pro-democracy. Of course, the media managed to find the wacko communists, not like they're hard to find, they have the big sign, and they interviewed them as if they were a representation of the entire movement. But financial pundit, CEO of Euro-Pacific Capital, and professional agitator Peter Schiff went down with Reason TV representing the 1% and found many young intellectual occupiers who were in support of capitalism and knew that capitalism was not the cause of the collapse, but that capitalism had been hijacked. Now, in a very general sense, the cause of the collapse was the hijacking of government by these institutions and the Federal Reserve. Basically, a direct result of goal number 1. Free and fair elections. No corporate money and no financial gifting. And that is exactly what we had. This is not capitalism. We are in a period of crony capitalism. This is corporatism. The government and the people who funded them are well known to be in bed together. Corporations and politicians are one and the same these days. Financial gifting has corrupted our government. They no longer look like ordinary politicians corporations representing the people. If you look hard, they look like goddamn NASCAR drivers. Their interests and loyalties are to those who bought them the election, not to those who voted for them. In 2000s, the government had the power to make laws, and financial institutions had the money to bribe those with the power. That's what caused this whole crisis. What type of politicians was Occupy Wall Street fighting against? Look no further than Sanders' opponent, Clinton, who's received multiple donations from the big banks. Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, all of them. If you think she is not going to repay them with favors, you are out of your fucking mind. If I gave someone that much money and they didn't pay me back, I would fucking shoot them in the face and go, where is my money? Even though she talks about campaign finance reform, it's basically like she is using campaign finance to climb up the ladder and she's planning to pull it up behind her so nobody else can do it. Anyways, Sanders has been adamant about getting big banks and other corporations out of the elections. This big money is continuing to grow and grow year after year as it is pumped into these elections and into the government through laws like Citizens United, allowing for unlimited contribution by people and corporations, because of course corporations are citizens. Right or wrong is not the right question to ask here. The question is, why do corporations donate so much to these elections? Because they want the power to do as they please, and they want to know the government will come to their rescue if or when they fail. That is not capitalism. So how do we stop it? Do we create regulations that ban this type of activity? I mean, it wouldn't hurt. Or we could decrease the power of the United States government over business. We had a free market with no government intervention. There would be no power to be bought. Companies could thrive and fail as the market deemed appropriate, and the government would not take taxpayers' money to save them. That is what capitalism is all about. A private company takes their own profits and suffers their own losses. The type of economic system we have now is based on private companies taking their own profits, and the losses are socialized to the people. It's socialism if they lose, it's capitalism if they win. And that is what really sparked this corporate greed. The insurance of the government that these corporations could not lose. The game was rigged. They did stupider and stupider shit in hopes of bigger and bigger profits. And if they won, they were geniuses. If they lost, they couldn't lose. That was the genius of the whole situation. They could only win. So they fucking pulled that slot machine handle over and over and over again, even through the bailout. Now, goals 3 and 4 are related to ending the Federal Reserve and increasing transparency. Sanders wants these big banks to be held responsible for their actions, and he wants to audit the Federal Reserve. Now, here comes the very shocking point of the crisis. It was not caused by financial institutions. It was caused by Washington, D.C. Peter Schiff in his video with Reason TV keeps asking the people, why are you here? Why are you not in Washington? Washington, D.C. and the Federal Reserve, which is not a government body, but I'll get to that in a week or so, collaborated. The Federal Reserve started printing money. Washington, D.C., George Bush exactly, created a bill encouraging everyone and anyone to buy a new house. And Wall Street ate all this up because they knew these mortgages and debt produced by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac was backed by the U.S. government, essentially making them 99.99999% risk-free. You'll often hear the analogy of a drunken Wall Street. In the period of 03 through 07, the Federal Reserve and D.C. poured the liquor. This shit was strong. This was like jungle juice you drink at a college party. You know, you got the vodka, the gin, the absinthe, the moonshine, and Wall Street drank it like it was a goddamn Irish bum. Then when it all went wrong, D.C. and the Federal Reserve bailed them out by just printing more money. Nobody knows exactly where all the money went, but that's part of the problem. Why do they deserve to be bailed out? How is that money being used? That's what they were fighting for at Occupy Wall Street. That's what Sanders is still fighting for. Now, this episode is not about showing everybody how great of a candidate Bernie Sanders is, but rather show people how the Occupy movement managed to plant a seed in the psyche of a large portion of Americans, especially young Americans, like me, who were either graduating high school or in college at that time. And that seed has managed to blossom and grow over time and is directly responsible for the popularity of Bernie Sanders. Like I said in the last episode, Bernie Sanders staying in the race has caused Hillary Clinton to talk about these issues, ones that echo exactly the core of the Occupy Wall Street movement. You think Hillary would have talked about the big banks, money in politics, the Federal Reserve, if not for Bernie Sanders, if not for Occupy Wall Street? No way in hell. Bottom line, I personally feel that Occupy Wall Street could have been a stronger movement had they unified around a more core and central leaders elected by the group. But unfortunately, they did not want their movement to resemble that of the institutions they were protesting against. But together we stand, divided we fall. For the core of the people, we're united on these principles of free elections, transparency, and ending corporate greed. So although Occupy Wall Street did not bring any immediate sweeping changes, any arrests, prosecutions, or really anything at all at the time besides a smelly park and thousands in damage, it did set in motion the wheels for a real change that has been building for years and will culminate in this election. Who is going to win? Financial institutions or the people? The 99% or the 1%? Will the government begin reflecting the voice of the people or continue being the voice of corporations? Will we have a government with reduced power that gets out of our market and creates free markets? Will they continue to subsidize and monopolize these corporations? It's not for me to tell you the answer. It's up to you, the viewers, millennials, to all the people who believe in the ideals of Occupy Wall Street to tell the world how things are going to be from now on. It starts with a presidential election, but it doesn't end there. It continues with every other election. Stay informed, educate yourselves, and vote, and let your voice be heard. To fight Wall Street's serious greed addiction, don't go after them. Go after those who give them the drugs to ruin lives. Politicians and the Federal Reserve. As always, make capitalism great again and make democracy great again. As always, thank you for watching another episode. You know we'll be here every Friday with a new episode of Mo Money. For now, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share my video with everybody. Follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook, Mo Money.
Signing out.
Freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.